Just transition is all about building trust to deal with the transition that is absolutely imperative if we're to meet the test of the climate emergency. It means, first of all, that workers and their unions must have a voice, that there must be agreed plans about how you transition with the aim of protecting and growing jobs.
Well, just transition is a way to make our societies and our economies more prepared for the protection of our climate and of our environment.
Just transition is not just about protecting the environment. It has to have human rights at its core.
It's a transition process. It's a long-term process. Inshallah, it will become transformative and policy at national level.
It is not only the struggle of trade unions and labor movements. It's the struggle of all movements who stand for human rights, for justice, and for environmental sustainability.
I just want to say, and I think that is very important thing, is that we have always to be aware of the fact that new technologies bring benefit first to the well-educated, urban, modern people, and that it may leave the impression that those that are vulnerable, that are poor, that that are marginalized in a society will be the losers. And I think that it's very important that the just transition concepts show that it works for those vulnerable, marginalized, poor, and that this will bring them better life.
A northern view of what just transition is should not be imposed without question. This is not a cut and paste solution. It is a complex situation, and it has to start with respect for people at the grassroots.
When we talk about investing in jobs, we say yes, there are many jobs to be had through a just transition in heavy industry, in energy, but where the predominance of women are in the care sectors. Care has to be amongst the major investments in future jobs.
Women who have been disproportionately affected by conflict, by climate change, and by COVID are still fighting to have their voices heard. At the grassroots, we have really, really amazing kick-ass feminists working very hard for the communities and working for national movement. But in government and in the military, they're actually trying to blot out those voices. And this is where solidarity movements like ours, like Palmer Center, and everyone else comes in. We need to amplify those voices. Those feminist voices must be heard, because what they're standing for is the fundamental core of just transition.
Bueno, la transición justa, nosotras decimos que tiene que ser radical. Bueno, no tiene que ser una transición, debe ser radical y rotundo por todo esto que está pasando. Y bueno, tiene que ser, pues, tiene que ver con desaparecer del planeta todas estas relaciones de desigualdad entre hombres y mujeres. La transición justa tiene que pasar por transformar, erradicar ese sistema capitalista, ¿ya? Y para esto también es importante, pues, avanzar hacia la autosostenibilidad, produciendo nuestros productos con todo lo que tiene que ver con la producción, el comercio local, con el consumo consciente. Y también todo esto pasa por empoderamiento, ¿verdad?, en las mujeres y transformación que tenemos que hacer para enfrentar, pues, esta crisis climática y ambiental.
The struggle to promote a just transition must be, first of all, be driven by social movements, individuals or individual organizations cannot pretend to promote change. To promote change, you need to build a social movement.
Firstly, we are trying to demystify and have trainings that are accessible so people can actually connect to that in their lived experiences, and they're not intimidated to talk about these so-called big issues. The other thing is also for them to support them to find and fight for the solutions that will help their communities, but also contribute to the global move for environment and justice. So that's very important. And very often, when people from the grassroots are unable to send their voice internationally, sometimes we try to amplify their voices by making sure that their messages are heard globally at important conferences and gatherings as well. And when we can, we actually support those activists themselves to go to these meetings and to speak up so that the world can hear their voices directly.
We want to give African women at the community level, at the grassroots, the space and the platform to, first of all, think about what is development, what does development mean for them.
Overall, if we don't climate and employment proof the future with climate-friendly jobs, and if all investment doesn't have a sustainability lens, then we will not stabilize the planet. It's that simple.
Fighting climate change is the most important task for all of us. It is about our common survival and about our children's future. We all need to contribute to building our societies stronger and also to make sure that the transition is just. A just transition is about workers' rights, it's about women's rights, it's about peace and security, and to make sure that we build a sustainable, green and equal future.
Hoping that people are starting to see more that we can't eat money, we can't breathe money. Future generations need the planet, they need nature, they need that more than money. So that the focus purely on economic growth, I think that is becoming a lot more visible. So yeah, I think putting nature more at the center of the fight against climate change is really important.
This is not just a fashionable idea. This whole quest for a just transition is central to our continued survival as a species.
We need to secure the next generation will have a better future. Everybody must contribute to address this, otherwise humanity will die.
Nature is in crisis, and so we have to transform economic systems. It's literally not possible to continue in the current path. And I just hope, that is more and more clear. Join the conversation. There isn't a particular sort of organization that should be involved in the just transition. It has to be organizations with different backgrounds, so we can work together to find our piece in the puzzle so we can move towards a just transition.
We are speaking about the change towards a more livable and green future. But in that broad context, I think each organization and each trade union should be able to articulate a clear set of political specific demands that speak to their members.
Y bueno, trabajar desde el sentido de lo comunitario, desde lo organizativo también. Y esto no se logra sin amor a la vida, pues en todas sus formas, en las formas de actuar, de relacionarnos. Y pues cuando tenemos amor a la vida, somos capaces de transformar todas estas injusticias que hay en la sociedad. Y eso es fundamental para nosotras, y que las luchas vengan desde los pueblos, desde los territorios, y no desde la ONG o de las ONG. Pues entonces eso es fundamental, las transformaciones endógenas de los territorios y de los cuerpos situados en las comunidades.
any approaches must be consulted, and the union must have that capacity to move on. Otherwise, it will become an internal problem. And if you are in the forefront, you must remove your sectarian interest, looking only for the trade union. You must look more in a broader perspective, that what you're doing is not only for the trade union, for the collective bargaining agreement, but beyond the trade union and beyond the collective bargaining agreement, it is for public interest, because electricity is a public interest and a national necessity.
It is a very important issue, especially when you look at it in relation to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. It's an issue which is on agenda but does not have good advocacy. So there is a lot of work that still needs to be done for the general populace, and if for us to speak for the constituents who work for workers to understand what the just transition entails.
The question is, if governments and politicians do not want to commit themselves to the just transition, then it's time we make sure that those leaders who do commit themselves to a just transition are in power.
We need to step up the game. Time is running out. The international labour movement needs to put the issue of a just transition higher up on the agenda, and we need to strengthen international cooperation to make it happen. Change can start with you. Mobilize support, raise awareness, and cooperate with others.